Hey everyone, welcome back to Speaking Saturdays. Today we have a brand new set of questions, so let's get started. Part 1. Have you ever lived in or visited the countryside? No, not really. I've been to other places, but I cannot remember any single trip that we've had that was in the countryside. It's always been cities, maybe small towns, because I live in a really big city, so, but I have been to other places, but it's always been, small towns at the most, but I've never really been to like a village, the countryside, a rural area, although I'd like to, but the opportunity just hasn't presented itself. What do you like about the countryside? Well, I've never been there, so all that I know about the countryside is based off videos from the internet, people's recollections of their life there. And it does seem very quaint. I would like to eventually move someplace that's, more quiet, more laid back, more green, lots of like lush farmland, maybe even like forests. Yeah, I feel like I'm the kind of person that might do well in such an environment. I don't really like how noisy cities are and how many people there are. So I'd like a more, it's kind of weird because, when you think of the countryside, you often think of like, oh, like farming and things like that. And that's actually not, a quaint lifestyle. That's a lot of hard work. But anyway, that's a tangent. That's not really what the countryside is all about. But I would enjoy, the peace and quiet and just the, the kind of density. There's less, people there. So yeah. Why do some people prefer living there? Yeah, obviously, if you're, I know it's like a trope at this point that older people, retired people tend to like move from the city to the countryside, especially, of course, when you worked, and of course, to work, to, get a job, to make a career, you need to be in a big city, right? And then once they're done with all that, they move. So that's probably one reason, just a more relaxed life, But also, and this is something that's of course very important these days, is you get much better quality of air and water when you're not living in a huge polluted city. Naturally, that's also part of the draw. So yeah, that's like why I'm interested in as well. It's quiet, you get much better views. And if you're into like, gardening, farming and stuff like that, then that could also be another, draw. And do you think rural life is healthy? Now, this depends. Just because someone lives in a rural area doesn't necessarily mean that they're, into agriculture and things like that, right? But farming as a lifestyle, of course, it's very healthy because it's so much physical labor, right? You have to wake up at like 4 a.m. to feed all of your hens and cows and whatnot. It's a lot of work. But there's of course also non-agricultural rural life, which I don't really know much about, to be honest with you. But I, of course, they don't have as many, like, let's say, like right now, if I walk outside of my apartment, I can find dozens of stores and everything I need is right here. But of course, it's different when you live someplace rural, you'll have to walk a lot more, or maybe you absolutely need to have a car. Now, that's not very healthy, right? It's not good for the environment either. So that kind of depends what you mean by healthy, because you can have different types of lifestyles, but in general, having to walk more and just having less polluted air and water sources, I think that's a big deal. So yeah, I would say mostly it's probably more healthier than, it's definitely healthier than city life. Okay, now we go on to part 2. Here we go. Describe a family member you spend a lot of time with. You should say, who is this person? What do you usually do together? What kind of person is he or she? And explain why you spend the most time with him or her. And this could be anyone. It doesn't necessarily have to be immediate family. It could be extended family as well. But of course, they have to be family. They can't be they can't be friends. So yeah. Well, I spend most of my time with mom. And I don't just mean most of my time at home because I literally work from home, so we're always together 24/7. And I mean, naturally, yeah. I mean, there used to be a time when I would go out to work, like most normal people, but we'd still spend a lot of time together. But naturally, ever since I started working from home, we've spent a lot more time together. And you see, I mean, we do kind of all sorts of things. Sometimes we'll cook together, or mostly I try to annoy her, sneaking up behind her and things like that. Just, I might be, I might be an adult, but I'm still a kid at heart. So, yeah, oh yeah, and we love watching, YouTube together, especially, there's a lot of horror channels, right? They record things and like lots of paranormal channels. So we love watching things like that together. Oh, and we also love going shopping together. In fact, just a few days ago, I went out grocery shopping, and then I saw something that had like shoes and umbrellas and things like that. And I was like, oh, that looks nice. But then the shop owner was like, would you like to try the shoes on? I'm like, yeah, no, I'll come back later because mom wasn't there with me and shopping alone is so boring. We always shop together. So, and then we can spend like the entire day. And the thing is, when we spend time, we don't really realize that, oh, it's been like 3, 4, 5, 6 hours or whatever. We kind of get into these binges. I will sometimes drag her to a theater and we'll watch some kind of horror movie, and then she'll say she shouldn't like it. And then it's kind of a common hobby because ever since I was a child, we'd always watch TV together, especially things like, forensic files, like murder mysteries and things like that. In fact, that's kind of where my interest, developed. But anyway, yeah, we do lots of fun things together, but we also give each other a lot of, alone time. So we're kind of like yeah, we'll spend hours apart, but we also spend hours together. So it's, yeah, we're practically the same person, to be honest. I mean, the kind of person she is exactly the kind of person I am. There's of course a bit of an age difference, but when you think about it, we have the same behavioral quirks and traits. We for example wake up, and when you're woken up, like you don't really want to interact with people like for the first half an hour or so. We're exactly the same, and we have the same like ways of doing things. Like, how do I describe it? There's weird quirks that some people have, so we're pretty much the same. I mean, we're basically clones of each other in a way. Okay, and then the next part. There we go. Part 3. What are the advantages of strong family relationships? So people who have strong relationships within the family, well, naturally you have a good support system morally, but also financially, right? Because if you're striking out on your own, or if you don't have that family support system or relationships within the family, it's difficult to, really set yourself up for success as an adult. So, and the other thing is they tend to have much more stable lives, a lot more stability, they go through all the predictable milestones of adulthood much easier, and they're also less likely to fall into issues like, a lot of people get into abusive relationships, or they have low self-esteem or self-worth, feelings of, depression, things like that. So that's what happens when you don't have a strong bond within the family. And so that is something that like I don't know if there's been research or something about this, because of course there should be. I mean, there probably is, but yeah, people who haven't had that advantage, it's really quite sad. How many generations are usually living? That should actually say how many generations usually live. Like the ing form shouldn't be there, but anyway, I don't make these files, so right, how many generations usually live under one roof in your country? Yeah, so my country is very traditionally, very typical conservative. So I would say the situation here in terms of multi-generational families, or multi-generational living, co-living is kind of the situation that you would have had in the Western world maybe 80 to 100 years ago. Because living in like a typical multi-generational home where you have grandparents and you have, you know, the family and you have the husband and wife, you have the kids, sometimes you have aunts and uncles as well. That kind of thing was actually common all throughout the world. Now, it's still fairly common, although not as common as it used to be, let's say 20 to 30 years ago. So when I think of people my age who, you know, marry and have children, they normally just live in nuclear family setups. But then there's also still a lot of, surprisingly, there's still a lot of people like my coworker back, like this was from, I don't know, 10 years ago. Uh, we live, of course, well, yeah, of course, she was my coworker. We lived in the same city, but she was like maybe just a few years older than me. But she lived in this huge, like she had her husband and of course her in-laws, and then her husband's grandparents as well. And I thought, wow, that's like a lot of people. Like the way, like I grew up being a single child, an only child, and just my mom and dad, and it was great, you know. So for me, it's a little bit weird, but for most people, actually, it's still very, very common. But whenever I come across a story like that, I don't know, I find it odd. I find it surprising because I'm not used to that, right? It's very different for me. So yeah, most people probably live with like, I don't know, two generations or so. Yeah, it depends. It depends on whether they are urban or rural, if they are, you know, wealthy or not so well-to-do. Yeah, lots of factors. What are the benefits and drawbacks of a family of several generations living together? Yeah, I think I would like, for me personally, I don't like having to share my space with a lot of people. Like even though it's just in this like, I don't know how big this apartment is. I don't know, 850 square feet or something like that. And there's three people, mom, dad, and I. And that also to me sometimes feels like, you know, I need more space. Again, everybody's different. You know, some people love, you know, the whole thing that, oh, there's so many people at home. There's always someone to talk to. There's always someone to get advice from, right? Especially with children, there's always someone to look after the kid, even if the parents have to go out and whatever, right? So there's good aspects. You have a lot of safety. You have a lot of, you know, companionship. You never really are alone, right? You always have someone to, you know, not just talk to, but even just if you have a problem, you can talk to them. If you just want to chat, if you just want to relax, you always have someone for the activities, fun, things like that. But the problem is that you just don't really get alone time. And if you're someone who's an introvert, or if you're someone who just needs silence, that can be pure hell. There's always someone, and you never really have, like, for somebody like me, even having, like, if I'm working or if I'm trying to get something done, if I'm engrossed in some activity, I don't even like having somebody in the same room, you know, so even if they're not doing anything. So that's to me sounds very annoying, that you always have someone, or you know, there's always something to do with someone. The noise, the people existing, too many people existing around you, that can be very annoying personally, you know, for me. And then the other thing is, you can't just do things that you want, because if there's, like, you know, I don't know, like multi-generations, let's say there's 6, 7, 8, 9 people living in one home, even if it's a big home, right? You really can't make decisions yourself. Like, oh, you'd like to redecorate a room or something. Maybe you can, but most people can't, right? Because you have to have everyone's approval. So that's annoying. You want to bring someone home, you have to have everyone's approval, because everybody lives there, right? You can't just behave as you would if you were living alone or with just one other person or two other people. So yeah, I mean, to me, it seems rather negative. Do both parents have equal responsibilities in taking care of their children? You know, I think they should, right? Because I mean, it takes two to tango. That child wasn't just created out of one person, so of course both have equal responsibilities. but the way you define responsibilities can be different. What do you mean exactly? Do you mean financial responsibility, caretaking responsibility, physical caretaking, nurturing, cooking, teaching the child? There's many kinds of responsibilities. And so when we say equal responsibility, I mean in terms of duty, not in terms of the tasks that a mother or a father has to carry out, right? Because the tasks that they do can be different, and that depends on every couple, of course. But the duty that you have, which some people might call responsibility, but I want to use the word duty because you have this ideally, well, if you're a good parent, your duty, your job is to ensure that whatever you do is going to benefit that child and that no harm comes to the child. So how you do that, that depends, of course, well, on the couple and how they decide to share, their responsibilities. But yeah, both of them have an equal responsibility. You're both responsible if something bad were to happen to the child, or if the child doesn't really live up to what they should be doing. For example, if they're, let's say, not healthy, right? If they're like, I see so many obese children. I'm like, what is going on? What is wrong? Where are the parents, right? Okay, so that's it for today. If you have any comments, feedback, or anything you'd like to see from me in upcoming videos, just let me know. Leave a comment down below, and before you go, don't forget to like the video, and if you haven't already, just hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. And that's it for today. I'll see you in the next video. Make sure to check out our playlists. Bye bye.